Hi, I'm Eric Siegel with ericstrains.com. Today we're going to take a quick look at one of the new 3-rail O-scale Union Pacific auxiliary water tenders from Lionel. Alright, so what you're looking at here is one of two items that Lionel has offered that are meant to complement the Vision Line UP Big Boy that Lionel put out late last year in 2014. Both of these items were offered in the 2014 Volume 2 catalog. One of those items is the auxiliary water tender that you see here. The other is the commemorative UP caboose to go at the end of the train. Now, the tenders were delivered just now in July of 2015. The cabooses have not yet been delivered, but I expect they will be here by the end of the year. Now, for these auxiliary water tenders, Lionel has put out 3 different road numbers that you can purchase. The first road number is number 809, which has a big American flag on the side, and then underneath the flag it says Jim Adams. It's a beautiful tender. I thought about ordering that, but ultimately I went with this one. However, I did order the American flag auxiliary tender that MTH is making to go with their big boy, but that's a conversation for another day. Now, the next road number is what you see here, which is number 907853. And then the third number is number 907856, which looks exactly the same as this one. It just has a different road number. Now, in terms of the features, all 3 of them are exactly the same, so no matter which one you get, everything you see in this video applies. Now, for those of you who are new to this and maybe wondering what an auxiliary water tender is all about, it's really quite simple. On a typical steam engine with a single tender, the tender is holding a combination of fuel and water, and that fuel can be coal or wood or oil or what have you. And both of those are fed into the engine. The fuel is burned, which heats and boils the water, which creates the steam, which drives the engine. So you need lots of fuel and lots of water. And on a big engine like the Big Boy, when you're on long runs, you need a lot of water. And so oftentimes they would hook up an auxiliary water tender to the engine so that the engine had enough water to make its run without having to make repeated stops to get more water. And that's all it is. So what Lionel has produced here is essentially a smart auxiliary water tender. It's not just a piece of rolling stock. It has electronics on the inside that allow it to be run in concert with the Big Boy or any other steam engine. You don't have to run it with the Big Boy if you don't want to. So on the auxiliary water tender here, on the back there's a light and there's a coupler, and when you combine it with the Big Boy, this light becomes the backlight for the Big Boy rather than the backlight on the Big Boy's main tender, and the coupler back here becomes the rear coupler for the Big Boy rather than the rear coupler on the main tender. So when you reverse directions on the Big Boy, this backup light will come on, and when you fire the rear coupler on the Big Boy, this coupler will fire. Now, if that's confusing, don't worry, it'll all make sense in just a few minutes when we couple this thing up to the Big Boy. But first, I'm going to give you some quick stats and facts on this model, and we'll also take a close look at all the details. So the length of the tender is right at 11 inches. Almost everything on this tender is made of metal, and most of that is die-cast metal, so this tender has a great weight, 4 pounds, 14 ounces. The minimum curve needed to operate this tender is 0.31, but that really doesn't matter because if you're going to run it with the Big Boy, the minimum curve needed to run the Big Boy is 0.72. In order to operate this tender correctly, command control is a requirement. So you either have to use Lionel's Legacy command system or Lionel's Classic TMCC command system. You cannot operate this tender conventionally. As we go in for a closer look, right below the UP logo you've been staring at for the last few minutes, we've got some really nice rivet detailing here, a pipe going across the bottom, and the start of some really nice underframe detailing. And then of course you can see these really nicely done truck side frames. Here's a look at the front of the tender, and as you can see, it looks great. We've got some nice steps down here, a coupler cut bar. There's an electro coupler that can be thrown from the Legacy or TMCC remote. We've got some nice piping here, a brake wheel, and then we've got ladders going up either side, and then we've got really nice steps that have drainage holes in them. And then of course we've got lots of separately applied metal grab irons. As you can see, the back of the tender looks just as good, if not better, than the front. It has an operating backup light up here, and then once again, there's an operating coupler down here that can be thrown from the Legacy or TMCC remote. Here's a view of the top of the tender, and as you can see, it looks great. We've got metal handrails all over the place. There's a textured deck, and then this hatch here lifts up to reveal the Legacy TMCC run program switch. And finally, here's a look at the underside of the tender. There's some nice add-on detailing down here, and then we've got 2 pickup rollers, 1 per truck. All right, as you can see, I've got the auxiliary water tender coupled to the Vision Line Big Boy, and now I'm going to show you how to make these 2 things run together. And it's really quite simple. All you do is assign each item its own ID in your Legacy or TMCC remote, and then you put them into a train configuration so that they run together. So, on my Legacy remote, the auxiliary water tender is in slot 73, and then the Big Boy is in slot 92. And now I'm going to put them both into a train. So I'll hit the train button. I'm going to put them in train 4. Hit the info button, and then I hit build. I've got some old trains in there, so let me delete those. And now I'll add the Big Boy as the first engine. And then right behind the Big Boy, I'm going to put 73, which is the water tender. And then I'm going to hit set, and it's going to build the train. There it goes. All right, and that's all there is to it. Now the Big Boy and the auxiliary water tender are set up to run together. So now that the auxiliary water tender is in a train configuration with the Big Boy, the back of the auxiliary water tender is essentially the back of the Big Boy. So when I put the Big Boy into reverse, the reverse light on the auxiliary water tender comes on, not the reverse light on the Big Boy tender. And then when I fire the rear coupler on the Big Boy, the coupler on the back of the water tender fires, not the coupler on the back of the Big Boy tender. Now, because these are in a train configuration, you can actually have more than one auxiliary water tender if you want to. I mentioned earlier that Lionel has made 3 different road numbers for this water tender, so if you wanted to, you could buy all 3 and have all 3 of them behind the Big Boy, and because it's a train configuration, only the water tender that is on the back of the train configuration would be the one to have the active reverse light and active coupler. Now, as I've already mentioned, the front coupler on the auxiliary water tender can also be fired from the Legacy or TMCC remote, and that just gives you a few more options when it comes to operations. So if I want to fire that one while it's in train mode, I call up the water tender by itself, not in the train, and then I fire the front coupler, and there it goes. The last thing I want to point out is that although the auxiliary water tender was sold as being an add-on for the Vision Line Big Boy, it doesn't have to be that way. You can run this thing with any TMCC or Legacy equipped engine. Heck, it doesn't even have to be a steam engine. You can run this thing with a diesel or even an electric. So as you can see here, I've got a Lionel UP Mikado, and I've got it set up in a train configuration with the auxiliary water tender. So when I reverse the engine, the reverse light on the tender comes on, and then when I throw the rear coupler, the coupler fires. All right, we're going to wrap things up by taking the Big Boy and the new auxiliary water tender for a quick spin around the top level of track here. Now, you're going to hear some noises coming from the rear of the train, and that's because I've mixed in the new Lionel Vision Line PFE reefers. I'll be putting out a review video for those in the very near future.
Roger. We're signing out and going to bees. 4014 out.
Alright, that about wraps it up for this review. There's not much to say about this except it's a very well-built, cool-looking water tender, and one of these would look great behind the Vision Line Big Boy, as you've already seen. Now, they did make 3 of these. As I already said, there are 2 Union Pacific versions like this, and then there's one with the UP American flag on it. So if you wanted to, you could have 3 of these behind your Big Boy. That would look really cool, although it would be very expensive because the retail price on these auxiliary tenders is right at $380, which I think is a little bit high. But keep in mind that is the retail price. If you go through a good Lionel dealer, you should be able to get a decent discount off that retail price. And as always, if you're looking for a good Lionel dealer, try my favorite train store, which is Legacy Station. You can find them on the web at www.legacystation.com or give them a call at 770-339-7780. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm Eric Siegel, and I'll see you next time. To discuss this model or any other O-Gauge trains and to meet other O-Gauge modelers, check out the O-Gauge Railroading Magazine online forum at ogrforum.ogaugerr.com.